The crisp night air cut through the dense forest as I trudged deeper into the woods, my flashlight casting eerie shadows on the towering trees. The path, overgrown and barely visible, led me to a place I hadn't intended to find, a secluded cabin that seemed to emerge from the darkness like a ghost. It wasn't on any map, and I couldn't recall anyone mentioning such a place in this part of the woods, yet there it stood, nestled among the trees with its time-worn boards and a creaky, sagging porch. The windows were dark, offering no glimpse of what lay within. A shiver crawled up my spine as I approached cautiously, my senses on high alert. The air seemed to thicken, and the silence intensified, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. The cabin loomed ahead, and a flickering light from within briefly illuminated the windows. I hesitated but pressed on, my curiosity overcoming the growing unease. The door creaked open, protesting against its own neglect. A stale odor enveloped me as I stepped inside, the dim light revealing a room frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, faded wallpaper, and a fireplace with long-dead embers created a scene that seemed to defy the passage of years. My flashlight played tricks on the shadows, making the corners of the room dance with an otherworldly energy. The air felt heavy with secrets, as if the very walls whispered forgotten tales. I tried to shake off the sense of foreboding, convincing myself that it was just an abandoned cabin. As I explored further, I stumbled upon a creaky staircase leading to the upper floor. The steps groaned under my weight, protesting the intrusion. Upstairs, the air was colder, and the silence more oppressive. The rooms held remnants of a life left behind, a bed with tattered sheets, faded photographs on the walls, and a feeling that I was not alone. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every creak and rustle seemed to echo with unseen eyes. A chill ran down my spine as a floorboard beneath me let out a mournful moan, echoing through the empty cabin. I quickened my pace, driven by an inexplicable urgency to leave. Back downstairs, the front door slammed shut behind me with a force that seemed to defy the stillness of the night. My heart raced, and I fumbled with the doorknob, panic rising. The air grew thicker, and the shadows seemed to close in around me. With one final, desperate tug, the door relented, swinging open to reveal the night outside. I stumbled into the cold darkness, the cabin's facade disappearing behind me. The forest seemed to sigh in relief as I made my way back along the overgrown path, the cabin fading into the distance. As I reached the edge of the woods, I cast one last glance over my shoulder. The cabin stood silent and unmoving, as if it had never existed. The night swallowed it whole, leaving me with a lingering sense of dread. The woods held their secrets, and I, with a pounding heart, left them behind, vowing never to return to that forsaken place. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting an ethereal glow over the dense woods as I ventured deeper into the heart of the unknown. My steps echoed through the silent trees, the only sound in the otherwise still night. The path I followed led me to an unexpected discovery, a small, eerie dollhouse nestled among the roots of a gnarled oak tree. The dollhouse was an intricate replica of an old Victorian mansion, its miniature windows dark and its tiny porch draped in cobwebs. The air seemed to hum with an odd energy as I approached, drawn by an inexplicable curiosity. It was as if the forest itself whispered a secret, urging me to unlock the mysteries hidden within the delicate walls of the dollhouse. With trepidation, I crouched down to peer through the tiny windows. To my surprise, the interior of the dollhouse mirrored the outside world, an exact miniature replica of the very forest in which I stood. The details were uncanny, the miniature trees, the tiny path that mirrored the one I had followed, and even a minuscule version of myself standing at the entrance of the dollhouse. A shiver crawled up my spine as I realized the dollhouse seemed to replicate my every move. I could see my miniature self walking through the tiny forest, mirroring the steps I took in the real world. It was as if the dollhouse held a bizarre connection to my presence, a connection that transcended the boundaries of reality. With a mix of fascination and unease, I gingerly opened the tiny front door of the dollhouse. The air inside felt stale, and the eerie silence of the miniature mansion enveloped me. Each room mirrored the details of the real forest, right down to the tiny rustling leaves and the faint echo of my footsteps. As I explored the tiny corridors, a growing sense of dread crept over me. The walls of the dollhouse seemed to close in, and the air grew heavier with each passing moment. I felt like a trespasser in a world that echoed my own but harbored a sinister undercurrent. In a room that replicated the heart of the forest, I found a tiny, faded photograph. To my horror, it depicted the dollhouse itself, with a miniature version of me standing in front of it. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. This was no ordinary dollhouse. It was a twisted reflection of my reality, a place where the line between the miniature and the massive blurred into an unsettling nightmare. With a sudden urgency, I closed the miniature door and retreated from the dollhouse. The air outside felt fresher, and the moonlight seemed to wash away the unease that clung to me. I stumbled away from the dollhouse, the miniature version of myself frozen in its miniature world. As I left the eerie scene behind, the woods resumed their quiet serenity. The dollhouse disappeared into the shadows, a peculiar secret hidden within the heart of the forest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed into something beyond my understanding, a miniature world that mirrored the darkness of the unknown, forever entangled with the secrets of the woods. I'm not much of a storyteller, but I'll give it a shot. This happened a while ago, but it still gives me the creeps when I think about it. You ever been out in the woods alone at night? It's something else, I tell you. Anyway, here's my story, like it or not. So there I was, walking through the dense woods, surrounded by trees that seemed to stretch on forever. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting an eerie glow on everything. I don't know why I was out there really. Maybe it was the need to get away from the noise and chaos of the city. Maybe it was just the lure of the unknown. As I trudged through the underbrush, I stumbled upon a small clearing, and in the middle of that clearing stood a cabin. It wasn't like any cabin I'd ever seen though. It looked old, weather-beaten, and abandoned, yet there was something about it that made me stop dead in my tracks. It was like the cabin was calling out to me, whispering secrets I couldn't quite make out. Against my better judgment, I approached the cabin. The door creaked open, as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The only light came from the cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. I wandered through the dimly lit rooms, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The floor creaked beneath my weight, and the walls seemed to close in around me. It was then that I heard it, a soft, haunting melody, like a distant music box playing a tune that sent shivers down my spine. I followed the sound to a room at the end of the hall. The door creaked open, revealing an old-fashioned music box sitting on a dusty table. It played its haunting melody, and I couldn't help but be drawn to it. As I approached, the music grew louder, filling the room with an otherworldly presence. And then I saw her, a figure in a tattered white dress, standing in the corner of the room. Her face was obscured by shadows, and her eyes gleamed with an unnatural light. I tried to speak, but no words came out. The music box continued its eerie tune, drowning out any attempt at sound. The figure slowly advanced toward me, and the room seemed to close in even more. I felt a cold breeze, even though the windows were sealed shut. Panic set in, and I stumbled backward, desperate to escape. But no matter how fast I moved, the figure was always there, inching closer with each step. I burst out of the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. The door slammed shut behind me, and the haunting melody faded into the night. I ran through the woods, not daring to look back, until I finally emerged into the open moonlit clearing. To this day, I can't explain what happened in that cabin. Was it a ghost? A figment of my imagination? Or something more sinister? All I know is that some secrets are better left undisturbed, hidden in the heart of the woods where the line between reality and nightmare blurs into one. I ain't much of a storyteller, but there's something about that mountain cabin that stays with me. It was a chilly autumn morning, and I was up in the mountains for a hunting trip, seeking solitude and a chance to reconnect with nature. The crisp air carried the scent of pine, and the rustling leaves beneath my boots echoed through the silent woods. As I climbed higher, the dense forest began to thin, revealing a clearing where a small, weathered cabin stood against the backdrop of towering peaks. Smoke lazily spiraled from the chimney, a sign that someone had been there recently. Intrigued, I approached cautiously, my rifle slung over my shoulder. The door to the cabin was slightly ajar, as if inviting me in. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed it open. The creak echoed through the quiet mountainside. Inside, the air was heavy with the warmth of a dying fire, and the remnants of a meal lingered in the air. I called out, half expecting to hear a response, but only silence answered. The cabin was sparsely furnished, a worn-out couch, a rickety table, and a flickering lantern that cast long shadows on the walls. The feeling of being watched crept up my spine, but I shook it off as my imagination playing tricks. I decided to explore further, curious about who might have left the cabin in such a hurry. As I moved deeper, I noticed a set of stairs leading to an attic. The wooden steps groaned beneath my weight as I ascended, and my senses were assaulted by the musty smell of old books and mildew. In the dim light, I discovered an array of peculiar objects. dusty taxidermy animals, weathered hunting gear, and a collection of faded photographs. One picture caught my eye, though, a group of people, their faces obscured by time, standing in front of the very cabin I was now exploring. The date on the photograph hinted at decades gone by. A sudden chill ran down my spine, and I felt a presence in the room that wasn't there before. The air seemed to thicken, and the silence pressed in on me. I turned to leave, but the attic door slammed shut, trapping me in darkness. A soft whisper echoed through the space, unintelligible words that sent shivers down my spine. I fumbled for my flashlight, and when its beam cut through the blackness, I saw shadows dancing along the walls, shadows that seemed to move with a purpose of their own. In the midst of the spectral display, a figure materialized before me, an old hunter, his weathered face etched with lines of both wisdom and sorrow. He pointed a bony finger towards the photograph, and his ghostly voice spoke of a time long past, of friendships forged and promises broken. With the sudden gust of wind, the attic door swung open, and the ghostly figure faded into the darkness. I stumbled down the creaky stairs, my heart racing, and burst out of the cabin into the crisp mountain air. As I made my way back down the trail, the echoes of the ghostly tale lingered in my mind. Whether it was a trick of the mountain air or the lingering spirits of hunters past, that cabin on the mountain held secrets that spoke of a history intertwined with the very fabric of the wilderness. Some stories, it seems, are etched into the land itself, waiting for those who will listen. It was one of those crisp autumn days that make you want to leave everything behind and head for the woods. The leaves crunched beneath our feet as I led my two kids, Timmy and Lily, on a hike through the heart of the forest. The air was laced with the scent of pine, and the distant calls of birds created a melody that echoed through the trees. We must have walked for hours, my son chattering excitedly about bugs and rocks, while Lily skipped ahead, her laughter bouncing off the trees. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that stretched out before us. And that's when we stumbled upon it, a cabin, nestled among the trees, as if it had been there for ages, hidden from the world. Curiosity got the better of us, and we approached the cabin. Its wooden exterior seemed weathered, as if time had etched its story into the grain. The door hung slightly ajar, inviting us to take a peek inside. I hesitated for a moment, considering the implications of barging into someone else's solitude. However, the kids were already pushing the door open, their eyes wide with excitement, so I figured we might as well go in. The air inside was musty, and the dust particles danced in the slivers of sunlight that streamed through the boarded-up windows. The cabin was abandoned, that much was clear. An old rocking chair swayed gently in the corner, as if stirred by a breeze that didn't exist. The atmosphere was heavy with a silence that seemed to swallow our words. Despite the eerie stillness, the kids were eager to explore. They ran from room to room, their laughter echoing through the empty space. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, a subtle unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. Maybe it was the silence, or perhaps it was the odd arrangement of items scattered around. A child's toy on the floor, a tattered blanket draped over a chair, and a few other things. We eventually reached the attic, and my unease deepened. The air up there felt denser for some reason, and the light seemed to struggle against the darkness that clung to the corners. A soft whisper, barely audible, murmured through the silence. I glanced at Timmy and Lily, but their attention was fixed on an old chest in the corner. As they opened it, the whisper grew into a low murmur, like distant voices carried by the wind. I strained to make out the words, but they slipped through my grasp like smoke. The children uncovered old photographs, faces obscured by time, frozen in moments that seemed both familiar and hauntingly foreign. The temperature dropped, and a cold wind swept through the attic. I called out to the kids, urging them to leave, but their eyes were fixed on the photographs, their expressions distant. The whispers intensified, weaving a tale of forgotten memories and lost souls. I grabbed Timmy and Lily, pulling them away from the chest and towards the attic door. As we descended the creaky stairs, the whispers faded, but the air remained heavy with an unspoken history. We stepped out of the cabin, and the door slammed shut behind us, the echoes resonating through the quiet forest. The kids looked up at me, their innocence untouched by the eerie encounter. I forced a smile, but the unease lingered, a nagging doubt that whispered of stories buried in the heart of the woods. Tales that transcended time and generations, waiting to be rediscovered by those who stumbled upon the silent cabins hidden among the trees. It was a brisk autumn day, and the sun's golden rays filtered through the rustling leaves as I ventured into the woods with my two kids, Oliver and Emma. The forest seemed alive with the crunch of leaves beneath our steps, and the air carried the distinct aroma of autumn. The children's laughter echoed through the trees as they raced ahead, their excitement contagious. As we wandered deeper into the woods, we stumbled upon a cabin nestled among the trees. Unlike the previous cabin, this one seemed oddly out of place. The wood was fresh, untouched by time or weather, and the door swung open easily, revealing a space that seemed surprisingly well kept. The cabin's interior was bathed in the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the unobstructed windows. Oliver and Emma, wide-eyed, entered cautiously. The air inside was devoid of the musty scent typical of abandoned places. It felt almost sterile, as if the cabin had been untouched for years, waiting for someone to discover its secrets. My eyes were drawn to a chest in the corner, its polished surface gleaming under the sunlight. Curiosity piqued, I approached and opened it, half expecting to find old relics or forgotten trinkets. To my surprise, nestled within the chest was an NVIDIA RTX 4090, its sleek design and cutting-edge technology standing in stark contrast to the rustic surroundings. Oliver and Emma gathered around, their eyes widening at the sight of the powerful graphics card. It seemed surreal, as if a piece of the future had been transported into the heart of the forest. The RTX 4090, still wrapped in its static-resistant bag, emitted an almost ethereal hum. As I reached for it, a sudden chill filled the room. The sunlight dimmed, and shadows danced along the walls. The air crackled with an otherworldly energy. I hesitated, my hands suspended in midair, and Oliver and Emma too sensed that something had shifted. The hum from the graphics card grew louder, now accompanied by whispers that seemed to weave through the air, carrying a story of technology far beyond its time. Oliver and Emma's eyes widened, a mix of fascination and trepidation reflecting in their gaze. The whispers morphed into an electronic symphony, a cacophony of voices and futuristic sounds that resonated within the cabin. The RTX 4090 began to glow, casting an otherworldly light that painted the room in shades of blue and green. In that moment, the cabin transformed into a bridge between worlds, a nexus of past and future, nature and technology. Oliver and Emma and I stood in awe, caught between the mundane reality of the forest and the inexplicable magic emanating from the chest. And then, as quickly as it began, the symphony faded, the glow dimmed, and the whispers vanished into the air. The RTX 4090, now in my hands, felt like an ordinary piece of hardware. The sunlight streamed back through the windows, and the forest resumed its natural symphony. We left the cabin, Oliver and Emma still marveling at the unexpected discovery. The door closed gently behind us, as if sealing away the transient fusion of worlds within. As we continued our hike through the woods, the graphics card in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon a secret place where technology and nature collided. A place where stories were etched not just in the wood and stone, but in the very circuits of the extraordinary. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I decided to take a solitary hike through the woods, seeking solace in the embrace of nature. The trail wound its way through a dense thicket, leaves crunching beneath my boots as I ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. The rustling leaves overhead created a rhythmic symphony, a natural melody that seemed to beckon me further into the wilderness. As I followed the winding path, I stumbled upon a clearing, and there it stood, a weathered cabin, seemingly untouched by time. The air around it carried a stillness, a quiet that transcended the usual sounds of the forest. The door was slightly ajar, as if inviting me to explore the secrets within. Intrigued, I pushed the door open, and the hinges creaked in protest. The air inside was heavy, tinged with the scent of dust and age. The cabin appeared deserted, the furniture draped in dusty sheets, and the sunlight filtered through the cobweb-laden windows, casting a muted glow on the surroundings. In the corner of the room, I noticed a desk covered in a thin layer of dust. On it lay a stack of papers, yellowed with age. As I leafed through them, I realized they were filled with complex mathematical notations and symbols. My eyes widened as I recognized the subject, a proof challenging the assumption that 2 is a prime number. The equations were intricate, the logic convoluted, and my mind struggled to grasp the implications of the mathematical anomaly before me. It defied the fundamental principles I had learned, introducing a perplexing contradiction that unsettled the very foundation of mathematical understanding. A shiver ran down my spine as I continued to decipher the proof. The silence in the cabin seemed to amplify the weight of the revelation. The equations, though complex, held a strange allure. They drew me deeper into a world where the laws of mathematics danced on the edge of the unknown. As I delved further into the calculations, the air in the cabin shifted, as if charged with an unseen energy. The dim light flickered, casting erratic shadows on the walls. A soft hum resonated through the room, the mathematical proof seeming to come alive with an otherworldly presence. Suddenly, a chill enveloped the cabin, and the equations on the paper began to rearrange themselves. Numbers shifted, symbols morphed, and the very fabric of the proof seemed to defy rational explanation. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, as the air crackled with an inexplicable force. In the midst of this mathematical metamorphosis, a figure materialized before me, a spectral mathematician, eyes filled with an unearthly wisdom. The cabin seemed to resonate with the echoes of mathematical truths that extended beyond the boundaries of human comprehension. Unable to bear the weight of the revelation, I fled from the cabin, the door slamming shut behind me. The once quiet forest now seemed alive with whispers, as if the very trees held the secrets of the enigmatic proof. As I hurried away, the paradoxical equations echoed in my mind, haunting me with the unsettling notion that, within the heart of the woods, the laws of mathematics could be rewritten by forces beyond our understanding. It was a misty afternoon when I decided to escape the noise of the city and take a solo hike through the woods. The trail led me through a dense thicket, the air thick with the scent of pine. To keep my spirits up, I found myself humming the infectious tune of Call Me Maybe as I ventured deeper into the heart of the forest. The trees loomed overhead like ancient sentinels, their branches intertwined in a natural dance. As I walked, the song provided a light-hearted rhythm that echoed through the woods. Lost in my own melody, I rounded a bend and stumbled upon a clearing where a rustic cabin stood, seemingly out of place in the tranquil surroundings. Drawn by curiosity, I approached the cabin. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a scene straight out of a surreal dream. My ex-girlfriend, Emily, sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by an elaborate train set. The miniature tracks wound through the cabin, and tiny, sinister-looking butterflies perched atop the cars. "Hey there," I greeted cautiously, my humming silenced by the oddity of the scene. Emily looked up, her eyes gleaming with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. "Come, sit," she beckoned, gesturing to a small stool. "I've been working on this project, an election for the Soda Can Council. The winning can will determine the fate of evil butterflies moving to Madagascar." I hesitated but took a seat, trying to make sense of the bizarre tableau before me. As Emily meticulously adjusted the miniature soda cans lined up on the tracks, she spoke of a grand conspiracy involving carbonated beverages and malevolent butterflies with sinister agendas. She explained in hushed tones that the election would decide whether the soda can known as Fizzy Pop would be crowned supreme leader, forcing the evil butterflies to relocate to Madagascar. The gravity of the situation seemed to hang in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stepped into a parallel reality where logic took a back seat to whimsical madness. As Emily fervently manipulated the train set, the butterflies on the track seemed to twitch with malevolence. The cabin, once filled with the soothing sounds of nature, now echoed with the ominous hum of mechanical miniature engines. I excused myself, the surrealness of the situation becoming too much to bear. The moment I stepped out of the cabin, the woods regained their normalcy, the misty air feeling strangely comforting. I couldn't help but glance back at the cabin, half expecting it to vanish like a mirage. I continued my hike, the strange encounter with Emily and her soda can election becoming a surreal memory etched in the fabric of the forest. As I walked away, the haunting melody of Call Me Maybe lingered, its innocent tune now intertwined with the memory of a cabin where evil butterflies plotted their sinister journey to Madagascar, guided by the whims of a peculiar soda can election.